Here is a social studies book for kindergarten, first, and second grade. It's called Adele and Simon in America by Barbara McClintock. Adele and Simon had traveled all the way from Paris to New York City to visit their Aunt Cecile. But that was just the beginning of their journey. Aunt Cecile was taking them on a train trip around America. The night before their departure, Adele, Simon, and Aunt Cecile were busy packing. Adele spread Simon's things out on his bed. There was a journal, a pencil box, a cowboy hat, a tin drinking cup, a canteen, a bandana, a pair of binoculars, a map, a pocket knife, a jacket, a vest, and a pair of bright red suspenders. Please do not lose anything on our trip, sighed Adele. Don't worry, Adele, said Simon as he hopped around the bed. Well, I've labeled Simon's things with his name and my address, said Aunt Cecile, just in case. The next morning, Adele and Simon and Aunt Cecile arrived at the train station. People were rushing to and fro, darting around suitcases and trunks piled high on baggage cars. As Adele, Simon, and Aunt Cecile were about to board their train, Adele stopped Simon. "Weren't you carrying your journal?" she asked. "Journal? What journal?" asked Simon. Everyone looked up and down the platform and looked, but the journal was not to be found. "We haven't even started our trip, and you've already lost something," moaned Adele. Simon was up the steps and inside the train before she could scold him. Their first stop was Boston. Adele, Simon, and Aunt Cecile walked all around the city and through the park. They took a boat ride on the lagoon, gliding past tall willow trees and under a bridge. Adele and Simon were delighted. Aunt Cecile was happy to put her feet up. Adele wanted to sketch the boat. "Simon, could I borrow your pencil box?" she asked. But Simon was too busy watching a family of ducks to hear her. "Where's your pencil box?" asked Adele. Louder this time. Simon just shook his head. "First you lose your journal, and now your pencil box is missing." Adele frowned. "That's okay," said Simon. "Let's feed the ducks next." From Boston, Adele, Simon, and Aunt Cecile were on a train a day and a night, traveling past farms and little towns. When they got to Chicago, they walked along busy streets crowded with people and trolley cars. Bells rang and horns and whistles blew. But Adele and Simon were so fascinated by the sights that they barely noticed the noise. "Simon, weren't you wearing your cowboy hat?" asked Adele. "I was just a minute ago," said Simon. They retraced their steps, scanning the sidewalks and street. The cowboy hat was gone. "I don't believe this," grumbled Adele. Aunt Cecile had friends who lived on a farm in North Dakota. Adelaide and Simon fed chickens and patted cows and explored the barn. The smell of freshly baked biscuits drew them back to the farmhouse. Aunt Cecile met them with a pitcher of warm milk. "Simon, where's your tin drinking cup?" asked Aunt Cecile. "I don't know," said Simon. "I had it this morning." Everyone hunted high and low for Simon's tin cup. Nobody found it. "Simon, will you stop losing things?" said Adelaide. "Okay, Adelaide." Simon smiled. South of Seattle on the Pacific coast, Adelaide, Simon, and Aunt Cecile visited Cape Disappointment. But they were far from being disappointed by the steep cliffs and strong, salty breeze and the cool waves rolling up onto the beach. They took off their shoes and walked barefoot in the sand, past a family digging for clams. "Just think, Simon, we're halfway around the world from our home in Paris," shouted Adelaide. "Adelaide," Simon shouted back, "my canteen is gone." Simon was right. His canteen had disappeared without a trace. "Don't worry," Simon said. "I still have all of my other things." When they got to San Francisco, Aunt Cecile took Adelaide and Simon to Chinatown. They wandered up and down the narrow streets, ate dim sum, and bought dried plums for dessert. "Simon, weren't you wearing your bandana today?" said Aunt Cecile. "I thought I was. Maybe I took it off just to be more comfortable," said Simon. "But I still have my binoculars and my map, my pocket knife and jacket and vest, and of course my red suspenders." "Oh, Simon, how can you lose your things like this?" scolded Adelaide. In Denver, Aunt Cecile hired a guide to take them up into the Rocky Mountains. After days of train travel, they were eager to be outside. They rode burros along winding trails near the edge of a steep gorge. "I'm thirsty," said Simon. "If you hadn't lost your canteen, you'd be fine," grumbled Adelaide. "Simon, use your binoculars. I see a mountain goat," said Aunt Cecile. When Simon reached for his binoculars, he couldn't find them. They looked everywhere, and looked again. After a while, they gave up looking. "Why can't you stop losing things?" sighed Adelaide. But Simon didn't hear her. He was chatting away with the guide as they rode ahead on the trail. When Adelaide, Simon, and Aunt Cecile reached Santa Fe, they walked around the plaza, passing families out for an afternoon stroll. The air smelled of pinyon fires and roasted chili peppers. "Simon, may I look at your map to see where we are?" asked Adelaide. "I don't know where my map is," Simon said. "It must have fallen out of my pocket." "You've lost your journal, your pencil box, your cowboy hat and tin cup, and canteen and bandana, even your binoculars, and now your map is missing," Adelaide complained. "How can you keep losing things?" "Don't worry, Adelaide. We can always borrow Aunt Cecile's map," said Simon. He looked up at Aunt Cecile and squeezed her hand. Aunt Cecile smiled and squeezed back. Adelaide and Simon and Aunt Cecile visited a ranch in Texas. They rode horses all day long. along a dusty trail and ate beans cooked on a campfire for dinner. When the sun began to set, the cowpokes got out their pocket knives and began to whittle pieces of wood as they sat around and talked. "Adelaide, do you know where my pocket knife is?" asked Simon. Adelaide and Simon and Aunt Cecile and all the cowpokes hunted high and low. The pocket knife had vanished. "Oh well," shrugged Simon. "You're hopeless," Adelaide sighed. New Orleans was alive with laughter and music and the sounds of people speaking French. Adelaide and Simon felt right at home. As they walked up and down the streets, Adelaide noticed that Simon wasn't wearing his jacket. "I don't know where it is," said Simon. "I am really tired of looking for your journal and cowboy hat and canteen and binoculars and all of the other things you've lost along the way. And now your jacket is gone," scolded Adelaide. "Don't worry," said Simon. "It's too warm to wear a jacket anyway. I'm much happier without it." In St. Louis, Adelaide, Simon, and Aunt Cecile decided to take a ride on a steamboat. As they waited to board, they looked out over the wide Mississippi River, filled with boats of all shapes and sizes. The steamboats with their huge paddle wheels and tall smokestacks were the most impressive. The sun was hot, but Simon didn't feel overly warm. That was because he wasn't wearing his vest. "I had it on a minute ago," he said to Adelaide and Aunt Cecile. They looked all over, inside barrels and behind piles of rope. The vest was nowhere to be found. The steamboat whistle blew. It was time to board. Simon was the first one up the gangplank. "That's Simon," said Adelaide, as she and Aunt Cecile followed him onto the deck. Their last stop was Washington, D.C. Adelaide, Simon, and Aunt Cecile strolled along the mall. Aunt Cecile showed them the Washington Monument, the Smithsonian Institute, and the U.S. Capitol. Out of the corner of her eye, Adelaide noticed Simon tucking in his shirt tail. "Simon, your suspenders are missing," said Adelaide. "I guess they are," said Simon. They looked here, they looked there, they looked and looked and looked. "I can't believe this. You have lost everything. Your things are scattered all over America," fumed Adelaide. But Simon wasn't thinking about his things. "Let's climb all the steps of the Capitol, Adelaide. May we, Aunt Cecile?" Simon smiled. Adelaide and Simon were happy to get back to Aunt Cecile's apartment in New York City. The mailman had left a big pile of packages inside the front door. "Goodness, these are all for Simon," said Aunt Cecile. "What could they be?" Simon opened the packages, and there were his lost things: his journal, pencil box, cowboy hat, tin cup, canteen, bandana, binoculars, map, pocket knife, jacket, vest, and red suspenders, sent from all the places they had visited. "I knew we'd find them," said Simon. "Thank you for taking us all around America, Aunt Cecilia," said Adelaide. "Can we take another trip?" asked Simon. "Maybe someday, Simon. But first you two had better get a good night's sleep." "Good night, Adele." "And good night, Simon." "Good night, Aunt Cecile," said Adele. But Simon didn't say anything. He was already fast asleep.